Every time somebody asks me to recommend them a book, I always recommend a book from the same author. Today I'm going to review or provide a summary of one of his books, but my recommendation is for you to buy every single one of the books this man has ever written. And this author is named Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And the book I'm going to be reviewing today is called Antifragile: Things That Gain from Disorder. So this is the book I'm going to be reviewing today. But before we get to the review, please make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the little notification bell so you can get brand new videos the moment they come out. That notification bell is very important, so please click it. Okay, if you've been following my work for any length of time, you know that I've quoted this man Nassim Nicholas Taleb about a bazillion times. So if you're a big fan of anything that I put out in terms of my content, in terms of my philosophy on life, I pretty much stole a good chunk of that from Nassim. And I always recommend people read his books just because it's hard to explain kind of the treasure trove of information that you can find in his books. And he actually kind of famously says that, if it's a really good book, no one can do a summary of it. A really good book can't be shrunk down into bite-sized chunks for you to understand what the book is about all at once. And he's right about that. You are not going to get everything that you need to know about the book from watching this video, but it'll give you a clue as to some of like my favorite highlights and aspects of the book that really changed my life. And this is a book that you should buy. This is a book that you should read over and over again. This is a book that I've read probably 5 or 6 times by now, and each time I read it, I get a brand new insight. So instead of a quote-unquote summary of Anti-Fragile, the book, let me give some of the cliff notes, some of my favorite pieces of the philosophy from the book, share them with you so that you are convinced to buy the book and add it to your library. So what is anti-fragility? What makes something anti-fragile? Well, as the book says in the title, something is anti-fragile if it gains from disorder. So in the book, he uses a couple different examples and analogies for kind of different states that you can see in different phenomena everywhere. So first, there is something that is fragile. If you put a glass vase in a box and you drop it, it's going to break because it's fragile. Something that is robust is something more like a rock. You can do a lot to a rock, but it's pretty much going to remain intact. Now, what is something that is anti-fragile? What is something that gains from kind of disorder and chaos? Well, one good example is nature. So there's a lot of crazy things going on in the universe and in nature that seem very disorderly, but because of all that disorder and random mutations and things like that, we have this kind of intelligent system that has evolved over time, and nature has spawned all of these kind of positive benefits of evolution due to the chaotic nature of it, right? So he talks about a lot of different systems and kind of defines them as fragile or as robust or as anti-fragile, right? One thing that is also something that he notes as anti-fragile is kind of the system of entrepreneurship and how a market moves forward, right? So everyone who tries to start a business isn't successful, but kind of entrepreneurship and innovation as a whole is something that gains from disorder, because even though some people lose, the collective intelligence that gains through markets and innovation, through people trying and failing and taking the examples of other people, seeing how they tried and failed, and kind of that knowledge that builds up over time, even though every individual entrepreneur doesn't win, some of them do lose and succumb to that disorder. We get the benefits of getting kind of the finished products of that disorder, which are literal products, right? So that's kind of the concept of anti-fragility, that, the best things that we have in this world come from some level of iteration, some level of tinkering. Nassim is not really a big fan of textbook kind of academic knowledge, right? So, he kind of describes academics as people who will kind of write a book about how birds fly after the fact that they've flown. So they don't really know the underlying mechanism, but academics overly try to explain everything looking backwards when really a lot of knowledge is built from the ground up through this kind of aggressive tinkering in different evolutionary nature of things. So that's kind of the basic concept of anti-fragility. Some of the other concepts that I love from the book, probably my favorite concept, is the idea of convexity. Now, what is convexity? Convexity basically means that you have a limit to your downside and an infinite upside. So he used the idea of convexity kind of in the way that, he invests. So he was an options trader, which I don't know all the fundamentals of it, but basically what he did was he bet a small amount on something random and chaotic happening in the market, knowing that he was probably going to lose that trade 99% of the time. But he knew what the floor was. But the upside is that when inevitably, even though he didn't know when it was going to happen, some random shock in the market would cause something extreme to happen, something he calls black swan event, he would get really, really, really rich. So the way that you take advantage of convexity in your life is put yourself in a position to profit and to get exponentially high rewards and protecting yourself from having a really low downside, having a kind of calamitous situation that would ruin you. So for me, basically everything I do, I try to set up in a convex way. I'm doing videos. One of my videos could go viral, but the downside of my video is nothing. The downside of my video is no one watches it. I spent, a couple $1,000s on my setup. I know the downside of it. When I write a book, I spent a couple $1,000s putting the book together. I know the downside. At worst, nobody reads my book. I can't sell negative books. But if I write a really good book and it kind of enters the chaotic nature of the market, then it has the upside of profitability. And if you look at something like the book industry, which is very anti-fragile, a lot of writers and authors, they don't necessarily become successful, but writing as a whole produces some extremely high exponential results. You have books like Harry Potter, you have books like 50 Shades of Grey, where there's just randomness involved in the success of those books. No one can predict virality, otherwise it wouldn't be virality. But you can put yourself in a position to get those types of wins in your life. So you want to figure out how you can be more anti-fragile, how you can put yourself in a position to benefit from a lot of trial and error where you don't pay too much for your mistakes and you have a potential high upside. And then throughout the book, he spends a good time talking about what some of the fragile systems in our society are. One thing he talks about, I'm not an economist, but he basically talks about the fact that we don't really let the market do what it's supposed to do. We don't allow natural recessions to occur. So then that puts us in a situation where we kind of inject Novocaine into the system, but we don't treat the causes, just setting us up for a further blow up in the future. He makes the analogy of kind of forest fires. If you don't let small forest fires occur every once in a while, then because that brush isn't cleared, eventually there's going to be a really large forest fire, right? So he kind of equates the economy to a situation like that. He talks about how, a lot of people are in fragile situations when it comes to their employment and getting into a bunch of debt, right? So he talks about this idea of the turkey problem. So a turkey gets fed every single day by its owner. The turkey is happy and healthy 364 days out of the year. The turkey is like, wow, I live an amazing life. But then on Thanksgiving, all of a sudden the fate of that turkey changes, right? So he talks about a lot of turkey problems in society. So what he doesn't do is try to predict when something like the economy will crash, but he will say that the economic system, the way that it's built, is fragile and is susceptible to major collapses because we keep trying to smooth over the market instead of letting it do its thing. And there's a lot of big debates about that. I won't really get into that because I'm not an economist, but this idea of robustness, fragility, and anti-fragility are areas that you can apply into your life in so many ways. Like take the idea of robustness, right? So you build robustness by kind of building redundancies in your life. So you have two livers for a reason, so that you can, or two kidneys, for a reason, so that if one fails, then you have another one. You have multiple systems that are redundant to where other parts of your body can compensate for each other, right? So that makes you a little bit more robust. Having savings in your account for a rainy day makes you more robust. Having multiple sources of income makes you more robust. Building a stronger body makes you more robust. And it's just always about this concept of kind of learning to strengthen yourself through kind of small little concessions, right? So you put yourself through a little bit of physical stress, so it makes you overall healthier, more robust. You put yourself, into creative and entrepreneurial stress to kind of have that upside and build that anti-fragility, where you only gain a certain type of knowledge from kind of this aggressive tinkering. And so he just goes through so many different examples in the book of all of these, and I'm already almost 10-12 minutes into this video, and he's right. You can't summarize everything that's in there, but there's a ton of valuable information you can find just kind of derived off of these three concepts. Probably one of the final things I'll talk about in the book, there's a section in the book called Skin in the Game, where he dives into kind of the problems with fragile systems, and he actually went on later to write a book about skin in the game, and he talks about the fact that, why do we keep creating these fragile systems? It's because the people who create these fragile systems, they don't pay for their own mistakes. They don't have skin in the game. We have Wall Street bankers who are getting rich off of short-term kind of fixing the system with all this quantitative easing, and then when the economy fails, all the taxpayers bail people out, and then they walk away with their riches, right? So they're not paying for the mistakes of the system, which is why we continue to create fragile systems. Politicians continue to create fragile systems to get elected because they're not thinking about the ramifications in the future. And all of this stuff that we do to try to put a band-aid over everything in the present, from politicians and the elites and Wall Street bankers and the economy, to yourself, getting yourself into a bunch of debt for the now, not seeing the blow up later. This really is a book about risk. And that's really what Nassim covers in every single one of his books. It's this idea of risk. How do you manage risk? How do you understand what's truly risky and what isn't? Take it for example, a lot of people think that having one source of income and being in a bunch of debt is risky, when it's actually, or that's not risky when it actually is. And they look at something like entrepreneurship, where you're always on your toes constantly, as risky, when it's actually less risky because you're aware. Look at risk in the system, how you're living your life, how you're investing your money, all sorts of things. So in short, that is my not insanely in-depth covering of the book Antifragile. It's something that you should check out for yourself. I highly recommend you read this book. Check out the link in the description and go get it. And then while you're already at the cart, grab my book, Real Help and Honest Guide to Self-Improvement. This is a book that's going to give you brutally honest facts to help you change your life. So make sure you go and grab that. Lastly, make sure to like the video. Make sure to leave a comment. Let me know what other books you want me to review. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the little notification bell so you can get brand new videos when they come out. There should be some videos popping up in front of your face right now. Feel free to check those out, and I will see you on the next video.